everyone. Welcome to our podcast. Today, we have a special episode where we are wrapping up our season 2. And we came together to talk about some of our favorite episodes, as well as some of the interesting themes that we've been working on during this last season. So today, I will do the minimal amount of talking, and I'm going to pass it on to the team to cover for me. And I will start off with Marie to kick off with her own favorite episode.
Yes, so my name is Mari. I am from the Netherlands. I work at Zeeuw and live in Istanbul for about 3 years now. So covering the Istanbul office together with team. And I am the global relationships manager. And one of my favorite podcasts of the second season was a podcast by David Staley. And because we were working on campus projects in the previous years for which we studied different theories on university design and future campuses, and David Staley is one of them that we had as a podcastee. And he is an associate professor at the Department of History at The Ohio State. But what I really like about him is that he calls himself an historian who doesn't stay in his lane. Which means that he is at the same time a historian, but also a futurist, which makes a lot of sense, I think, because he is studying complex systems from the past to think about complex systems in our present. And ultimately, he presents a thought for the future. And I think this is actually something we also do at Zeeuw when we create new design concepts. So thinking about the future, he wrote in his book, Alternative Universities, about 10 different models for higher education as a response to the uniformity of existing education systems. And also with that, university places and educational places. He writes that universities nowadays very much look alike, feel alike, have the same way of teaching, and somehow also have the same courses. Which he conducts to that ultimately when right now you are a student and you're picking where to go, it comes down to a certain reputation or price when you pick a university, because there is really not much differentiation on different levels. But we do need more options because we're very much aware that there are so many ways of learning. So why are there not different, different forms of universities? Why is it so stuck in its own institution almost? So in the podcast, you, Pinar, and David, you discuss around 3 of his alternative university models. And one of them is the nomad model, which is a university that is physically moving around the world. So similar to, he was inspired by how students who are actually taking a gap year between high school and university, they take a gap year and they go travel around to enrich their life. So this model is taking inspiration from that. So by experiencing culture and by practicing the general worldly skills and independence that students are learning, this is something he is interested about. And interesting is that he is talking about the physical form of the education, which is moving around. So it's not just the student which is traveling, but the university itself is traveling, and the students will come visit that. And I think especially during COVID times and online education, this is already happening. There's already a step that is being made now. The student could actually be anywhere, just as we as workers can be anywhere, as long as a student has a computer and an internet connection. But then he also mentions, and I really agree, that there is a big benefit of having the teacher or professor in the same space, as well as your fellow students. So this is important for the nomad model, that it continue, it travels with the students, and it's not just the student by himself with the laptops in some different places. Because it's, during COVID, what we feel and see now is that digital education only makes the learning experience very flat. And rather than feeling like a student and enjoying a moment in your life as a, mostly right now a younger person in between high school and working life, you're making friends and stories. We are now with COVID sitting by ourselves behind our screens. And this is a big issue that also has a big of social and psychological impact. And this, I think this nomads, like the theory of having the connections here, I think it's also interesting to connect back to other concepts that he mentions in the beginning of the podcast, which is that educational institutions can provide either transactional or a transformational agreement with the students. And transactional in this case is very much on the rise right now. Like people are starting a study because it's very much implied and people deem it to be important, and having a university degree from a certain university in particular is important to us and also to our parents and to our environment. But with online education only, like without having that one-on-one time with the professor or with your fellow students, this way of education is a very transactional one. Like you just get it's very like to the point, like you will get your diploma out of it and you can continue to your next steps in life. So, but it sounds like I sound negative now, but important to say is that it is actually a great form of access to some people having online education. Like for people with certain disabilities or obstacles to go to a campus and follow education there, they can definitely prefer to actually have online education. But then on the other hand of access, when you talk about the access to education, like how excluding is online education for those who do not have access to a computer or to a stable internet connection. And I think this balance of accessibility, we also discussed this a lot during What's Wrong with Education, like the panel event we organized in 2021. And I think we have to be careful with like choosing either arguments only for digital or physical education, because both have benefits and down points. So for me also, like a hybrid form or like a choice you can have as a student, a personalized form of education that feels right now like the way to go. And it's way more fitting for different needs of different people. And we will stop also with generalizing students and what they need. So in that sense, like I think the next steps for education is it becomes education that adapts to student needs instead of the students adapting to the requirements of current access to education. But this is a bit on the transactional side. And also he then says there's also the transformational agreement. Because universities and colleges are not just educating you in a way, connecting to an industry, but they become an instigator of so much more. And they literally transform a person. And this is how my university time was. Like I was moving to Amsterdam. I was living and studying in the center of the city. I made new friends for life that are now my friends for more than 10 years. I did internships with companies that were connected to the university, and also through my university, I moved. Like I went to Istanbul and decided like to come more, and now here's my life. So, in that sense, it gave me so much more than if I would just have an online transactional education. So yeah, I cannot imagine following online only classes. Like also with being a student, you have so many questions. Like if you're having only online, like I think get stuck with all these questions if I cannot discuss them at tea or at lunch or any other time with fellow students who are also coming from all different cities, all different backgrounds. So there's a lot of benefits in like having this physical or hybrid interaction.
Made me thinking that the digital only online kind of like kills the chit chat and the gossip, right? It's like people only focuses on whatever the task is ahead, or like just the class, and then you're kind of missing out the gossip and the chit chat, which is actually very crucial to the development of people. And Yuval Harari is also like talking about this gossip theory, how human race survived with the gossips.
Yeah,
that's I think made me thinking. But what an opening! Now, who is following up? I wonder. It's like good luck.
Yes. I'll pass it to Nico. to continue
Yeah.
on your favorite podcast episodes and like intro.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. So my name is Nicola, and I've been an architect at Sauer for 1 year and a half, like nearly and a half. And I've been working actually from Beirut online. So we were talking about online aspects. So I miss on the gossip, but yeah. My favorite episode actually is how to get to zero waste with Mark Horseman, and he's actually a strategic sustainability advisor at Amsterdam Airport. And like I picked this podcast for two main reasons. The first one is actually the content, so the subject, which is extremely related to Sauer because first it talks about the future, so it's not only about the present. So like we treat the projects in that way. So it kind of like wants to create solutions for problems that maybe we still don't have, but we're gonna have like in 2050, 2040, 2030. So that was really interesting in the podcast, like talking about goals that are for like 20 years to come or 30 years to come. And by talking about this, it's also like we also discussed like the circular economy and how in general in different projects, people only think about the problems that they face. So let's say a budget, a cost, the materials now, but they don't think about like what this type of material did for the environment to bring it, let's say, to the site, or also what will happen with the material in 10 years and 20 years. So these are really important aspects. And also because during the podcast, there are many different concepts that aren't only linked to this subject, but that were really interesting. So for example, there's this idea that it's always important to start a conversation. So whenever we want, let's say, to create a solution for a problem, if we want to really resolve it all in one go, maybe it's impossible to do it. So let's say based on our position or our budget, but sometimes it's just important to start something, and then based on conversations, on the process, on the journey, we can maybe solve it. So that was really inspiring. And also with sustainability, it's always brought as an add-on, like not always, in many cases, it's always brought as an add-on on projects. So at the later stage, after the design phase, we talk about sustainability, materials, but if we don't think about them from the beginning, like the solution won't be as good as what we could have achieved. So that's something also to think about. And also something that a lot of people do is that we tend sometimes to think of our role also based on our status or title in a company. So let's say you're a specific employee that like me, I said I'm an architect, but it's also important to think of yourself as more than your status itself, because you can give ideas on other also fields, and like you have all of these different types of fields within the company that you can touch, and that's what he did. So that's why I'm talking about this. The role that he wanted to have in the company didn't even exist, but based on his passion and also like repetition, he talked about it a lot with the CEO of the company, which enabled him to create this whole department. And I also related it to our company here, because even when I joined as an intern, I remember like my first project, like I was given a platform to give ideas, even if I was an intern at the time. So that's really important. And also, like, let's say with other people in the firm. So when Irem gives a design and graphic design, we also give our opinion. And when you have a design, Mary comes in and also gives a check. So that's really interesting in a company to have. And to go back also to some technical aspects that you guys discussed, which was really interesting, is that he also talked about some techniques that were found that will help in this, like how to get to zero waste, is that with enough research, you can come up with interesting elements. So you can rethink elements in architecture. Like for example, the slabs, he talked about dry slabs that you can actually take out after time. So I feel we always think about slabs as something that's super fixed and super rigid, but you can even rethink these elements for the years to come. So that was really interesting.
That was definitely a really eye-opening episode for me, because it really is a great case example of how to approach something holistically. Like they approached materials to people as all stakeholders, right? Like how a light bulb's life cycle should be planned, and how does it don't become a waste, and how can it be replaced by the manufacturer themselves, because they would know what to do with the parts. And he was very much aware that, you know, even if everything about the building itself or the systems were sustainable, they still wouldn't have done their job, because who is the retail within Schiphol, right? Like if let's say one of the vendors there still uses plastic packaging and doesn't do proper recycling or composting, then they're not doing their job. Or the visitor is passing through the airport if they're not participating in this behavior well. So he was very much aware of the all players, and that's what they were trying to plan for. And hence, to your point, and like really thinking for the future and human behavior. And I think to your point too, generally sustainability efforts are like a patchwork done later to fix some problems. But it was very refreshing to see an approach where really physical environment, human behavior, and commercial behavior were all thought together, including supply chain. So yeah, I'm really glad you picked up that episode.
Yeah, and just to add something based on what you're saying to wrap it up, is that I think like I didn't say this word, but collaboration is maybe the most important aspect, because he also like discussed, like when he was talking about his role, he discussed like the restaurants also like at the airport. So it's something really far from architecture and building, but that you should consider at the end. So I think Irem, you're maybe next.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Nico. I am Irem. I'm a communication designer at SAR, and I'm based in Istanbul, also living in Istanbul. I'm 25, and I'm working at SAR like for a year, so I'm digging on the actually using my toolbox with our team. How can I use for good? Also during this year, I have been thinking a lot. So also the episode, I would like to talk about Angelica Palan, who an activist and founder of NAS Foundation. So I want to talk about her and what she may think actually. Angela talks about how her life changed with the AIDS epidemic at New York City in 80s, and which also affected her close circle really badly. She's not an HIV positive person, but takes action immediately during this epidemic, because takes action based on her observation and experience. Actually, this has made me think how important observation is, because today we are know lots of about lots of issues, but how much action do we take actually? Because this is something I've been thinking about that for a long time, and also this is how I've been working on it, like at SAR, because we have a toolbox, but how much do we use actually our toolbox for benefit our environment or our community? Our agenda is changing day by day, and we put ongoing problems aside from time to time. So Anjali is a person who has devoted her life to problem solving. She's integrated this into her life, not as a whim, but also with a real concern. So nowadays she's working on continue her work for LGBTQ plus community in her country in India, also works on animal rights. So if you ask me, I can describe her like total problem solver person and an activist. So in this episode, to support this idea, she was mentioning about using the English speaking club as a cover and meeting with the LGBT community to speaking their problems and improving how can they improve their life standards. So these solutions orientated and in line with the time activities like this kind of solutions, because when I think about this situation, I think this one the really problem solving orientated solution. So these solutions are really as inspirational again. So I personally love that such coincidence open the door to another connections, because when I listened to episode again, I remember the quote from from the women activists in street protests in Turkey. It's the really known one, and how can I can translate it directly, like, remember this crowd when you feel alone. Based on this quote, what I feel that some people who felt alone and powerless must have thought of Anjali, because she made really, really good and supportive things for the people and for her community. So it was really good to listen and really inspirational. So thank you, Anjali and Pinar. Keep doing this and recording the episodes.
I think this was so Irem joins all the episodes with me to make sure we look and sound pretty. So I think this was one of the episodes where we were both speechless afterwards. Like I can talk for hours, as you guys already know. So like I probably asked 2 questions and then we just listened like this. Like she has so many stories and she's wealth of knowledge. She challenged Indian law for many, many years, and she never I mean, she was dealing with this mega problem, but she never froze about it. She always had an action. So, and it's great that you're bringing that up, Irem, because I think one of the things that she said, that as a systems thinker, when she thinks about all the problems, sometimes she gets paralyzed. So what she does actually is she withdraws herself from that personality of hers, and she only focuses on one thing. And she told us that that's what helped me. That's how I addressed this issue. So if she was challenging the law and if she had a hearing for that, that was it. If she was having a meeting with kids, like parents, to explain his situation to them, that was it. If it was like a community workshop thing, that was it. Like she really tackled things one by one. And I think anything we say about her is an underestimation of how important her work was. So if anybody hasn't listened to that episode, we really, really do encourage you to. Yeah, I'll let you wrap up.
Yes. Yeah, I just remember it. She was suggesting to get a step. It's not important, it's big or small. So thanks again. Anyway, I will give the speech to Bengi.
Yes, thank you. I was so into listening to you guys. Now I'm not sure if I will be able to talk, but it was so much fun to listen all this. And like to the point that you said, Irem, about like we are thinking about so many stuff, but at the same time we are not taking as many actions most of the time. And I think another side of that coin is the actionist people, like the people who do things, they don't think enough. So it's always it's one of the biggest problems of the world, I think. It was like that in history, and it will be like that, I guess. So yes, I'm Bengisu. I'm the design researcher of the team. I guess it's been like 8 months since I started. And like the Sour podcast episodes are kind of my morning routines, because like in the days that I live alone, like when I wake up, I kind of like, I'm not sure if it's like common for everyone, but I like to hear some human voice. And it's always like when I get up, like while I'm preparing my breakfast, I start with one episode and I eat while listening. And that's why like from the start date, like even though Pinar lives in New York and I work in Istanbul, I felt really close to Pinar, because like every morning I was listening to her voice.
I apologize.
No, that was a deliberate choice. So I like your voice to start with the day. And the podcast episode that I wanted to talk about was the first one that I selected, because the title took my interest. It was quite related with my own passions as well. And the title was like the relationship between gardening and mental health. And the speaker was the Sue Stuart Smith. She's the writer of Well Gardened Mind. It's a great book. I suggest to everyone. Since I'm also like, I guess it's safe to say that, yeah, I can call myself gardener, I suppose. So that's why I felt close to that podcast episode, and I really like personally in my own life also, I really experienced the relationship between the psychology and the gardening practitioner. So it took my interest, and like in that episode she talks about so many things, but like today I noted like 4 of the main ideas behind her speech and behind her book, so I would like to talk about them. So in the episode she started to talk about the cycles of the nature, and since we are also nature, we work with cycles, we operate with cycles. And the first thing she mentioned was like gardening, working with the soil, and like just growing things and like seeing the whole cycle also connects, also help us to connect with the cycles again, because we are kind of like, we lose the touch with the natural cycles in the modern world. Like these are so cliche, but like even the day and night kind of like all the difference diminished, because for example, this is nighttime in Istanbul, but we have the lights on, and the bodies, like our bodies, kind of affected by all these changes and non-changes. So this was one of the things I also experienced while I was doing the gardening. And I think one of the biggest cycle as living creatures experience is the cycle of birth and death, and like how it continues. And I think our psyches also work in that way. Like some things just you need to let them rot, and like all these like rotten and gone stuff, in the end like they become another thing. And like just watching the nature, seeing the seasons pass, it's always like that. So I kind of enjoy the idea of living by cycles. And another topic she was mentioning, this was also great, and I haven't think about it before listening to her. She said that working with the hands and doing something with the hands, like it can be gardening, it can be in like craft work, it gives some sort of like confidence, or the feeling of being in control, which is quite healthy for all of us. It's also interesting because I really like that idea. Like she also gives some examples about the COVID process that we all experienced. Like even though word stops, like you have things to do with your hand, like, or I don't know, like imagining some extreme situations, the electricity is gone, you don't have Wi-Fi. Like now these are extreme situations for us. It's kind of sad, but like just having some skills to do with your own hands, it gives a certain confidence that you can go on, like even though some man-made stuff stopped working. So this was the second one I noted. And the other one was about the appreciation of the time, and like how we perceive time. And like in our world, like everything is about immediate gratification. Like we are just ordering stuff from our like phones, and it comes in 5 minutes, and if it doesn't come in 5 minutes we get angry, or so on. And we don't really get any satisfaction with that. Like things happen so fast, but we don't really know how to appreciate, because our like reward mechanism doesn't work that way. We are wired to like wait and observe the process, and then get the fruit out of it, and then appreciate it. So I think this is something that we can easily taste by growing a tomato, or like just growing a lettuce, and just seeing the whole process and being patient with it. And then that one little tomato makes you really happy, just because you waited that long. And another thing was she was mentioning remembering the concept of care, because like in our time she said that many people, and I think we kind of all can relate to this, but we feel like the care is the sort of burden, like caring ourselves or caring someone, like even just cooking for yourself, like preparing a good food sometimes like feels like a burden, and you just try to solve with like quicker, more immediate solutions. So, but the earth and like working with the garden is all about caring, and you feel like when you care for it, it cares for you, and like all the effort that you put in it, you get back it, like, and that feeling of caring for whole, like more holistic way of caring for earth. And it also makes you realize that you're part of it, and when you care it, you care yourself, and then you also take care of yourself better, because you also see the cycles and how everything works outside of you and inside of you. I don't know, these are really like holistic topics. They're all interconnected. So these were the couple of things that I noted from the session.
I really love that.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry,
Go.
like starting with the starting with the podcast from Zeeuw, and it was already like whoa. And then Bengisu, since Bengisu started the team, like how many like internal little brainstorms we had of how can we implement urban farming in the office. And I think we just we discussed everything. Like, can we do something on like a little bit on the outside? Can we talk like making a moist, like a rotten experiment that we can put in the middle, but then thinking, okay, but after some weeks, this is maybe not beneficial for us. It is maybe poisonous, but yeah, I think it's like, how can we somehow implement it even in the inside spaces when, when there is no balcony or when there is no private garden, but still valuing that we all need green during COVID time. I think that's like definitely something that came up again and again, like in all the projects and starting from the podcast.
Yeah, it was such a good episode, and that was such a great synopsis. I think I remember, maybe I even told this to Zeeuw during the episode. Like, one thing I left thinking was there should be no school without a garden and gardening activities. Like, kids, especially in this day and age, need to grow up in tune with those cycles and in connection to nature. And how she talked about that use of hands not only is meditative, but also is important for neurological development, all of that. It just made me think, kids have to be in nature, they have to be out. Why is there even closed schools? Like, that's how I like felt leaving that episode. And it just reminded me of that like immediate, really passionate thought I had after that episode. So that was such a good one. Not to name favorites, but that was a really good one. Go listen.
Yes,
no, I think also like it I mean, on a conceptual level, I think it also talks about being patient and like following through, and then keep spending time on what you're doing. Take it as like 3D modeling, or take it as like illustrating or sketching, or like the more you do it, you actually develop skills, and then you kind of like persevere at that, right? Like, and today's kids, let's say, that instant gratification is actually becoming more like look at Ada, let's say, right? Is she wants it right now. But I think that's kind of like the trait we are losing on and on as technology kind of like comes in, and then we are becoming lazier and lazier and lazier. In that sense, I think that gardening concept also touches up on that. And then the more you do something, the more you model, the more you pull and push vertices, you basically get better at that. It kind of like goes back to this 10,000 hours spending on a job thing, like that kind of. But that reminds me that's I think, and the care, I think we all do very much have in the team. I love that, like we are kind of like caring and loving every project in that sense. I'm quite happy.
Yeah, and about the learning that you said, like it reminds me also, the processes in nature are not linear, like they're non-linear. Yeah. And the systems that we create work in a linear concept most of the time, but we forget that we are part of nature, and our like also habits. Like when you try to build a skill, the whole process, it's not like you are always going upwards. You sometimes like go up, and another day you feel really down, and another day you feel like you improved much more. So like being in contact with nature also reminds you that your own nature. Okay, and I will pass it to Pinar.
Thank you, Bengi. Hi, I'm Pinar Gursoy. I'm an architect at Zeeuw, and I joined the team like around 6 months ago. I chose the episode with David Dylan Thomas on cognitive bias and its impact on design. I chose this episode because like I think it's a subject that like affects us all the time, and like it's always there, like on a regular day in our lives, or when you work on a design project or anything, like and it like affects all people on the world. So whatever you do or wherever you go, it's always there. Like it's almost like a drone sound which always lays right like around us. So that's why I think like we need to be aware of it and work on it actually, and also call other people around us to give more thought about this. So in the episode, David talks about firstly pattern recognition, like the basis of many biases that we have, like because what we see around us, like our environments and all the medium that people created consciously or unconsciously, like shapes our brains and how we think, how we act, how we respond to things. Like it's the environment shapes it. And as we like throughout the day, as we have to make a lot of decisions, and during that our brains like takes shortcuts, and sometimes it takes the wrong paths, and that errors are the like cognitive biases itself. So another like that's one type of bias, and the other one is like the built by the other people and like media, let's say. Another type of bias he mentioned was like confirmation bias, which is, I think, it's a very important one too. Like when you have an idea in your mind, then you only look for the evidence to support it, not the otherwise. So and with the social media, as all we know, like we kind of live in our own bubbles, and we if you let it, we follow people who think like ourselves, and we are following accounts always saying the stuff that we wanted to hear. And in this situation, it's really hard to get out of that bubble. And that's why like we need to expose ourselves and follow different people than we already know, and all the other source of information. And I think this is very, very important right now too, because even locally or globally, like we are living in really polarized societies, like leftists and rightists, or Republicans and like Democrats. And we are also like always support our idea. We are fighting for them. And even when we say like we should like break this confirmation bias and people should listen to other ideas and stuff, we are like deep down, I think we are always thinking like the other people should think and listen to other stories, like we are not talking about ourselves. So I think that's why this subject is very critical, because like even when we think that we figure it out, we are still under affected sometimes. So and like David's suggestion about like breaking these biases on a personal scale was, like I said, like exposing yourself, like reading and looking for other sources. Also like for about that, reflecting your biases on social media, he mentioned that stopping for a moment, like slowing down, helps to like helps not to make those mistakes. Also like not only on the social media, like as a person, when you start to maybe you can use meditation or therapy itself, and you started to you to stop and review the situation for a moment, then you can decide to if you will react, or how you will react to it. So I think it was really important. And the other thing was how we can fight with that biases on a corporate level, like corporate scale. And he mentioned the assumption audit meetings that he made. Like, I think it was really good. Second, how those identities might impact the project or the design. Third, who is not in the room, right, in that moment, and how that lack of perspective might affect your design. And the last one is how you can like include a group of people, or how you can give power to someone else who doesn't have it. So I think it's a great trick, and he explains how to like get into that corporate systems or official systems, and how we need to do that actually. And I think it was great to see that like at SAR, actually we are doing much of them, like to start a project. We are like making excessive research. We are reaching out to people who will be the users or the customers of the project, like the local people and everyone, and we are listening to them. We are trying to make the decisions like according to their comments and feedbacks. And I think that's why it was like personally, this episode was like a reminder to me, like to be always thinking about the biases that I might have. And professionally, it was more like a checklist, I guess, because Pinar, you also really love him and follow his advices and book. So it was really nice to see that.
Yeah, that episode was such a mind-boggling, like, okay, what are my biases? What shortcuts am I taking? Like, it requires, we're not self-aware, so like big portion of the day, right? Like we're running on things, doing tasks, and a lot of it is an autopilot. We do some critical thinking, maybe if we're lucky that day, and then some level of decision making, which most of it still runs in like autopilot. And we often talk about like how we need to slow down to really think. And in the episode, he talks about the book Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, who groups it as system 1 thinking and system 2 thinking. And you generally operate in system 1, but you really need to slow down to start focus and do critical thinking, which allows the brain to switch to system 2. So, and how much of that are we doing in a day, right? And I think how much of all of this is impacting meeting decisions, business decisions, big corporate decisions, global, more like social decisions, governmental decisions, and how much of that is actually coming from rational, critical thinking. And some of it is just like us running on autopilot. So it really like had me questioning a lot of things both about myself and our environments. And we definitely, as you said, like we like practicing things from what he said that kind of can break our stream in a way, because we all have the tendency and we all have biases that we don't even know we have. So yeah.
Sometimes you're born to it, right? Like you don't even know, like you're born with that culture. I think the multicultural aspect of this group also helps like to discuss things from very different perspectives. In that sense, I love the way how our group comes together and brings say like a Central European philosophy to like a very Middle Eastern kind of and maybe some Brooklyn attitude, and then that's kind of very cool.
Yeah, also like we are not like we are a diverse team, but we are not like depending on it and always try to reach to other people around the world. So I think that's great. Yeah. And yeah, I can pass it on to Melike now. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Melike Baltalar. I am an architect and a team member of SAR Istanbul. And I have been working with this incredible team for 2 years. Like this year as SAR, we completed many projects and participated in many competition projects and did a lot of research on many topics like accessibility, sustainability, inclusivity, and many others. Among all these projects, I think the project we discussed the most in this context was the 15-minute city project. We also published a journal about it. You can find it in website, our website. Like we tried to understand the city and people and their needs, and we tried to diagnose the challenges, like what is absent, inconvenient, unsafe, or inaccessible. Like during this research, the project made us ask ourselves what kind of city we want to live in. Like after COVID-19 hit, we already started to appreciate the value of social interaction, like green areas, being able to access our needs by walking. At the end, as humanity, we are finally understanding we need to take care of our planet, ourselves, and rethink and reorganize of our way of living. In that sense, I think my favorite episode is the one with Tim Gill. He is not an architect or urban designer, but his knowledge and his understanding and perception is incredible. The podcast title is How Child-Friendly Planning and Design Can Save Cities, and it's also the title of his book. Mainly, he talks about how seeing the city through children's eyes actually strengthens the idea of planning a city for all people and for the planet. I think the important thing was that when we design considering children and their needs, like we are starting to think about many issues, like we are thinking about scale of the city, like we are thinking about sustainability, we are thinking about accessibility. So we actually start to design for everyone. Also, like Tim Gill is mentioning that like children are hurt the most when cities don't work. They suffer the most from pollution, from traffic danger, from society that doesn't work in cities. But also he says children are kind of canaries in a coal mine. If a place is not suitable for children, it's not suitable for other people, or it won't be suitable for other people. Like this podcast is reminded me of myself looking for a flat in Istanbul, like which is the most populated city in Turkey. Back then, I was living in this city for 5 years, and no matter how much I love this place, I couldn't cope with the city anymore. I wanted to live in a quiet place away from traffic, crowds. Then I moved a different neighborhood. When I was choosing where I want to live, I looked for a neighborhood with like parks, walkways without any traffic noise. And my other criteria was trying to find a place that families can live. Now I realized that I unconsciously thought I could find an environment I was looking for in a place where children can live. And I think we are, especially the ones in the living in the crowded big cities, trying to be resilient and keep up with the city, like the traffic, pollution, and noise. We are trying to ignore those, but I think this is not a solution. This is not a long-lasting solution. In deeper level, I think we all feel exhausted and tired of huge blocks and the speed of the city. I think all of us needs mostly same things from environment. Not just the kids needs a place for walk or play or being connected with nature. We all need this peace around us. So I can finish my favorite episode with like a quote from Enrique Peñasola. If we can build a successful city for children, we will have a successful city for all people. So this was my favorite episode, I think.
It was so good. And as a mother to a 3.5-year-old, and how many times I have heart attacks in a day when we're trying to walk somewhere where you're next to busy traffic or something is going on or is overcrowded. It really was to me, and he talks about some case examples in the episode, which I really encourage everyone to listen, and how they built such successful setups, and to make a point to local government, how it's also economically better for cities to appeal to families, because families also spend more. So if hoping, if anything else is not an incentive for anybody who wants to make more money out of a city, this will be more of a consideration by cities in the future, because that's the way to sustain, seems like. But that was a great synopsis, Melike.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I can like leave the word to Inanc, I think.
Oh, it's me already.
Last but not least.
Okay. As I didn't prepare myself for this, I did my homework. Okay. So, hi, this is me, Inanc, the designer and architect for Sour for the past few years. I think I'm not going to choose I think I didn't choose my favorite episode last year, so I'm not going to choose my favorite episode this year either. But I think season 2, especially the episodes with Jamie Deringer, the founder of Design Milk, and then Professor Ryan Abbott, talking about the relationship between law and tech, and then the Tunisian entrepreneur Mohammed, I hope I'm not butchering his surname, Haufi, I think, the founder of Cure Bionics, and especially the What's Wrong with Tech panel that we did this year, all kind of highlighted and coming from like different perspectives. Like Jamie's coming from a social media publishing background, and Ryan is interested in like how tech and law kind of like coexist. Should we prevent people beforehand that the technology cannot develop, or like if the technology develop and then we kind of like try to see what harm is done and like try to fix that. And Mohammed is coming from this how to develop a prosthetics on a world of like there's nothing existing there, kind of very entrepreneurial skill set. All show I kind of confirmed the fact that our statement was like we are disabled by design, like the systems and the biases, going back to Pinar's point, and the products. Like there are so many things we take granted and actually not designed, not even considered to be designed, not child friendly, not age friendly, aging friendly, I would say. And it's also confirmed that the words access, equity, inclusion, collaboration, co-creation, they are used so lightly as a buzzword, as a fashion word, just to sound cool, or just to sell a product, just as a marketing statement. And all of these people actually do walk the walk. And I think on that sense, like this season, we were maturing on our mission. That was great. And we did created a lot of milestone projects that we were advocating for. So they become kind of trendsetters in their own field. And most importantly, we did these like in different scales, different typologies, and for different age groups, and especially for different problems of the world. That was great. I mean, the subject was maybe like a university campus, or a dermocosmetic container, or a wearable tech, or a hotel building, or like a system design. I think we were kind of like hands-on, walking the walk, and I think that will be the theme of 2022 as well. I'm hoping we will be able to keep expanding our prototyping capabilities towards end user applications. And I think our goal to create digital twins are out there, and we are kind of becoming more and more everyday experts on every skill set we have. So in that sense, that was a great year.
Thank you for the annual synopsis and season synopsis too. I think this was a great. This is the reason why you need to go last on these episodes. But it's kind of, I think going back to your point and really having to walk the walk, and it's not easy to do, nor educate people on how to do, right? And we have this big mission, and we're very much aware that it's a very big mission. And I think touching base and giving a shout out again to Anjali, that we also do need to recognize the small wins. We're trying to, let's say, battle in many different fronts, in many different topics that are related to social and urban. And in doing so, sometimes we need to educate stakeholders and clients, and also educate ourselves in how to do something that has never been done before. And I think we are also evolving and growing and finding new ways in how to do it. And also now there's a little bit more growing awareness on the genuine execution of collaboration or inclusion, instead of just having it sort of inclusion washing, I guess, a different form of greenwashing. So I think we really need to recognize the small wins, focus on the immediate thing in front of us, while also pulling back and see the big view in order to really works towards our mission, because we don't want to get paralyzed recognizing all the billion problems in the world and not do anything about it and just complain. But through collaboration and genuine co-creation, we're creating case examples on how we might tackle those one by one. And I'm very excited to see how that's going to continue to grow in different type of projects or demographies that we can execute these. So with that, we obviously have many cool progress-making, idea-disrupting people coming in onto our episode next season, season 3. And we will be interviewing them for various projects that are going on or research agendas we have. And the overall theme, again, will be pushing ourselves to rethink systems and designs that will sustain for both people and planet. So please stay in tune, and we'll be in touch with our next season, and we'll be announcing who's next soon. Thank you everyone for listening. This was a wrap. And that is this week's episode of What's Wrong with the Podcast. To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other podcasting platform. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Links can be found in the episode description, and you can also find them on our website, podcast.what'swrongwith.xyz. If you found value in the show, we would appreciate if you could rate us and leave a review, or you can simply tell your friends about us. For more details on our guests, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Don't forget to join us next week. Thank you for listening.